Hey everyone, and welcome to the first ever episode, the inaugural episode of Swarm Talk. This is presented by The Crowded Booth. We had an amazing Twitter Spaces opportunity last week, but now today we have an opportunity to talk to you about Georgia Tech for, we'll say, 30, 45 minutes. If it carries over and you have some more questions, we'll go in maybe into an hour worth of programming. Every single Tuesday, we're going to be live right here on the Crowded Booths page on YouTube, so make sure you hit the subscribe button. And we want to say, set up those notifications so you know when we go live. We appreciate you tuning in. If you're watching over on my Twitter feed as well, we appreciate you over there. We're talking Georgia Tech. We're going to talk about what happened this past week. We're also going to talk about what is hopefully going to happen this weekend. Obviously, Georgia Tech has a big test ahead of them, but we are excited to bring you that. You're going to hear from them later on here in tonight's show, but we're presented right here. I got to get it right. On our show the other night, presented by Section 103. And then down here, presented by Section 103. We're excited about them being a part of what we have going on. Obviously, Section 103, if you know who they are, they've got some great gear, some great branding, Georgia Tech gear as well, where you can get those limited edition items. It's a ton of fun. If you've never been a part of a stream like this, you can also, if you're on YouTube, you can drop a comment in there. Like this, share this if you're on Twitter. I know that we have the Twitter Spaces. We had close to almost 115 people in there. So hopefully we can see some type of engagement on this show as well. Well, first off, let's talk about Georgia Tech versus Kennesaw State. What you need to know, what you possibly didn't see that you wish you would have seen. And I want to go ahead and break the ice with this right here. This is what's big. A lot of fans came away from that performance and said, you know, the run game wasn't there the way we wanted it to be. And that's understandable. I think Tech ran for 158 yards against Kennesaw State. But it's one of those things, too, where we knew in recent seasons and what Georgia Tech had going on, you didn't want to be so one-dimensional that it hurt you. That was going to be the big thing. If you're too one-dimensional, especially against a program like Clemson coming up, they can make you one-dimensional and they can beat you right there. Georgia Tech, obviously, coming into this contest, did not know who their quarterback was going to be. Fans, at least, did not. And that was something that was interesting to watch as well. What exactly would that look like? I think the biggest thing that we now know is Jordan Yates, 4 touchdowns, tied for the best performance in program history in a first start of his career. He looked good. He commanded the offense well. That was something that we wanted to see, and he did that. We talked about in our Twitter Spaces earlier, the poise of this young man was something that was very, very crucial and key to watch. Very excited to see what he was able to do. And at the bare minimum, if Jeff Sims comes back and plays the way that many of them think he can play, and what his potential is, you have a very capable backup who's played at the highest level at the GHSA, won a state championship like we were talking about on Twitter Spaces earlier last week. He did a very good job of that. So what does that say to you about what this young man can do? Yates came in, he did a job, and the biggest thing is we were talking about this on the GoJackets.com podcast, which you should definitely tune in to that as well. That's where we're covering Georgia Tech for 24/7 Sports. We have the latest recruiting, hoops, and really every sport in between. Jordan Yates was hitting receivers that necessarily weren't being hit better. I think that's the easiest thing to say, against Northern Illinois. He was leading receivers. We got to see the transfer from Northwestern, Kyrick McGowan, who I don't know if you guys were able to tell as well. He did a fantastic job of yards after the catch. They call that yak. He did a great job of that, a good job of gaining more yards beyond the first down marker. He would take about a 7 or 8 yard slant route, turn it into 15, 20 yards. That's something you want to see, that athletic ability on the outside. We've said multiple through the Twitter Spaces and over on GoJackets.com, this was a program that felt like they had the weapons outside to compete. What was going to happen in the interior? So let's dive into that a little bit. Obviously, offensive line purposes, what you're going to have to see is you have the size now. Size is not necessarily a question mark that it was under year 1 and year 2 under Jeff Collins. But let's talk about this, and feel free to leave some questions or your opinions, and we'll feature them on the show there in the comments. Make sure to do that. Once again, like we said with Twitter Spaces, I want to hear from you all as well. We're going to hear from Jeff Collins at his press conference as well later today. But when you look and see offensive line-wise, I think what you still want to see is Kennesaw State was still able to get some of that pressure up the middle. That was something that stood out that I think was a little bit questionable for some of what Tech fans wanted to see. Jordan Yates, while a great athlete, was having to flee the pocket too quickly and too often. You'd like to see Mikey Minahan, Ryan Johnson, and whoever is kind of in that middle three, you'd like to see them take a step up and do a good job of protecting up the middle. Felt like the tackles did a good job. Cochran, obviously, he's a beast along the offensive line. Brian Jordan, who was in the color analyst role with Bob Rathbun on Valley Sports, mentioned that. Cochran was manhandling some of those guys on the outside, especially those edge rushers that the Owls had. That's what you want to see. I think Georgia Tech did a good job game planning for this game. I think they came in with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder as well to say, we didn't perform the way we wanted to. And that was kind of the beat of what we took from, obviously, press conferences last week. You talked to Ace Ely, the transfer linebacker, into the program. Post-game on 2 Saturdays ago against Northern Illinois was vastly different than what we saw in this round. The joy was there. It kind of felt like there was a sense of relief necessarily from what Georgia Tech was able to do. So that's something we're going to talk about as well. What can this team do going forward? I think just as much as you had to learn how to deal with failure against Northern Illinois, you've got to be able to turn around and say, how do we deal with the success that came on Saturday? You don't want to get too far ahead of yourselves because you have a team that you're heading into in Death Valley that'll humble you very quickly. Clemson's a dominant team. They've been the pride of the ACC for the past 5 to 6, maybe 7 seasons. This is the team that Georgia Tech is the measuring stick against, and for everyone, really, in the conference. So what can you do? Make sure to drop a comment of what you think Georgia Tech needs to do in order to remain competitive or win this ball game on Saturday. Let's take a look real quick at what Jeff Collins said today. I want you to listen to this real quick before we put it up. Jeff Collins was asked the question by our very own Rod McKenzie of what does this team have to do to finish against good teams? Here's Jeff right here.
We addressed it out literally 33 minutes ago before we went into the last period of practice. I pulled them up, and I'm like, the last 2 games we've not finished. We've played really good at times. We've had stretches of playing really good football. We have to be able to finish. And the last period, I just challenged them. We have to finish this the right way. And then on Saturday, it's not a thing that I can bring everybody up and have a intellectual talk about the importance of finishing. We have to learn that in this program, and especially when you're going into playing in an environment against a team that we're playing on Saturday, you've got to be able to do that.
That was Jeff Collins right there talking about what it means to finish against good teams. I think when you look at this game, obviously you go back to Northern Illinois, Georgia Tech did not finish the drill per se. They did not play a full 60 minutes, and that's what came back to hurt them. I think Collins and the staff also feel like, and this was kind of from being in the press conference today, they don't feel like Georgia Tech necessarily finished against Kennesaw State. If you go back to the 2 touchdowns that were scored late against Georgia Tech's defense, kind of some gimmicky plays, kind of some fluke plays as well that I don't think were well received in that realm for that matter. That's going to be something to keep an eye on. We're going to see how that goes as well going forward because, like he said, when you play the quality of competition that Tech has coming up on the schedule, we talked about this last Tuesday and last Thursday, you had a winnable game in Northern Illinois, you didn't take care of business. Well, now that's 2 weeks away. Nothing you can do about it. There's a lot of fans saying, where do we get the next win? We're going to talk about that as well. Where do I think Georgia Tech can get some more wins? It's going to be interesting to see with the schedule they have. But what exactly does this team do in order to take a step as a unit? Wrote an article over on GoJackets.com today talking about the defense. What does it mean to finish? And I think it's the veteran leadership. Talked with Charlie Thomas, obviously the rangy linebacker that has played very well under Jeff Collins in this early 2021 season, and Jordan Dominic that was named ACC Defensive Lineman Player of the Year. I don't know if you guys saw. We don't have the video. We need to get the video of the stiff arm that he had against the quarterback when he was going in to score. And then he shoves Charlie Thomas into another Kennesaw State player his own teammate into another player and scores a touchdown. The big thing for me going forward, Georgia Tech has to do, you have to limit the big plays. We saw against Northern Illinois, that was how the Huskies were able to get some of those big chunk yardage, go back to the first play, and that was how they did that. Going into the Kennesaw State game, the way the Owls scored their touchdowns was off of those big plays. It was something that you saw that was a little bit disappointing from a defense standpoint, and there were some subs out there. Guys like Akilo Stone on the defensive front obviously had a big game. But going forward, and if you want to be an elite team, there can't be much of a drop-off. You look at some of the elite teams across college football, and as much as it's going to hurt, there's an elite team that's just sitting around 60 miles away over in Athens. Go to Tuscaloosa. You're going up to Death Valley facing an elite team. When you play teams like that, there's not a massive talent drop-off or ability drop-off between the ones and the twos. Georgia Tech's trying to figure that out right now, trying to build some of that depth. They feel like the depth is good, but how does that translate to finishing? When you're playing an inferior opponent, you can't take your foot off the gas pedal. Just ask Florida State. Florida State took their foot off the gas pedal, and they paid the price in a program that I know a lot of you are not going to be too sad to see them lose, especially after how the Seminole fans mocked what happened to Georgia Tech in week 1. But when you look and see at what Tech has to do, they've got to limit the big plays, especially against a Clemson offense that is kind of Jekyll and Hyde. I don't think a lot of us know quite what to expect out of Clemson's offense. DJU, as people are referring to him as, and Will Shipley, 5-star running back that's come in, very talented young man, can line up as a receiver. We saw that a couple times against Georgia. But when you see what they had to do and what they were trying to do against Georgia, they probably feel like Georgia's probably got one of the best defensive lines in the country. What does Tech have? Tech will have a talented defensive line. We talked about that earlier in the Twitter spaces, a talented edge rush. They're going to have to put pressure on DJ. You can't allow the big plays, and your front seven is going to have to dominate and play against an offensive line that is a little bit shaky. I will say that. If there's one matchup that I feel comfortable with, not confident, but comfortable with for Georgia Tech, it's going to be the one where you're talking about Clemson's offensive line, which has had some trouble. They didn't have much of a test against South Carolina State this past Saturday. But you have a Georgia Tech defense that is going to be very interesting to watch. What do they do? How can they cause those negative plays? Flash back to talking to Jordan Dominic and Charlie Thomas. They both said that was the key to the game for them. Listen, this is a Kennesaw State team they faced. They knew they had to get negative plays and that they had to take advantage of opportunities when presented. And they did just that. They were aggressive but disciplined. That's going to be something that Georgia Tech has to do in this game against Clemson. It's going to be very interesting to watch just how they do that and to see what players step up in these roles. That's what's going to be interesting for me to watch. What guys have we not already mentioned? I think Charlie Thomas, linebacker, can line up in the nickel as well as a kind of a rover, can play that star position. I think he could be very beneficial. They're going to have to confuse DJ up front of this offense because the offensive line struggled. Now, while you may not have the personnel that some other these elite programs have, I think that's where we're going to need to see Andrew Thacker and Marco Coleman game plan and scheme. What type of exotic blitzes can we get against DJ in this offensive line that could give us an opportunity for some of these negative plays, could give us an opportunity for some of that? We got a comment here from Ken Fowler. Ken, you're in the Twitter space. Would love to hear what's your comments. I know it's been a focal point for defense this offseason, but to compete with Clemson, let alone seriously challenge Clemson, we need to be +2 or better in the turnover battle. Ken, I love your comment right there, and I think it's exactly right what you were saying. You have to win the turnover battle. And what did Georgia Tech do against Kennesaw State? They won the turnover battle. A lot of coaches talk about this. They talk about causing havoc, wreaking havoc, and I think Georgia Tech has to take on that mantra. That was something Jordan Dominic talked about in today's press conference, and kind of he was going up to the podium. I think him and Charlie Thomas were talking, and they said, what are we going to have to do? And he said, we're going to have to – or he mentioned something about, everyone's talking about the game plan, and he said, you're going to have to make negative plays. You're going to have to get some tackles for loss. We're going to need to see a bunch of TFLs up there on the box score for Georgia Tech's defense. You're going to need to see, like you said, Ken, appreciate the comment, you're going to need to see some of those big turnovers. And especially will be big. Flashback to week 1, when Clemson had the pick 6, that was a pivotal turnover. I'm not just talking about turnovers where you can't capitalize. We're going to talk offensively what Georgia Tech could look like. But defense for me is a big focus for this offensive season because you wanted to compete. You wanted to take that step. And like I said, Ken, I think turnovers is big, whether it's a strip sack from one of Jordan Dominic, Antonius Clayton, Kevin Harris, who's apparently going to see more time to transfer from Alabama, especially in this game. I was talking with someone about this the other day. If you were a guy at Georgia Tech, and let's say you're a Jordan Dominic who's been there a while, he's a veteran leader on this team. To me, you're going to need to see your big guys step up. What does that look like? This is what you play for. You play for opportunities like this. Listen, playing the Kennesaw States, I know a lot of fans were kind of riled up about this in our Twitter spaces. Well, what if we don't win this? That should never have been a conversation. This is the game where, as a senior, you can leave your mark. Georgia Tech has a ton of other games on the schedule like this. They're going to need to come up big. But I'm going to say for Clemson, last year, the 70 points that they put up on you, for me, if I was a defensive guy, and I got my producer over here, Ralph, sitting right next to me, we both played football in high school. I'll be out not at the college level. When you saw that team on your schedule the next year, that was something you took a little personally. You wanted to make a point and say, hey, you're not going to do that on us 2 years in a row. And I think a part of that is a self-respect as a player, self-respect as a unit. It's going to be interesting to see what Georgia Tech can do with that because, listen, Clemson's a formidable foe. Talked about Will Shipley, talked about some of those weapons they have on the outside. I would not be surprised to see them try to stretch the field against this team. And listen, there's a host of injuries, too, for Georgia Tech. What would it look like if a Tariq Carpenter is not available to play in this game? Very physical, hard-hitting safety for the Yellow Jackets. Zamari Walton, can he go in this game? I think a combination of you have to feel good about the secondary is they took it upon themselves. They watched the film and then talked with Trey Swilling before the season started. He said, okay, now it's time to burn that film. It's a new page. Well, here's your opportunity right here, Trey. Here's your opportunity right here, Wanye. Love those guys. They're great character-building guys for this roster. But this right here is an opportunity to go and kind of put your money where your mouth is as a player, and they're competitors. Now, I'm not saying that to dog on Georgia Tech or say anything like that because, like you said, any team that you cover, you want to see them do well. But this is an opportunity for you to kind of shake the mantra of we're a cellar dweller in the ACC. Obviously, this is a little bit of a rivalry between these two teams. Less than, 90, 100 miles separate these two programs. This is going to be a fun opportunity to watch these two teams battle off. And I think, too, this is a little bit of a litmus test game for Georgia Tech for the rest of the season. Where are we at as a program? Northern Illinois happened. Kennesaw State happened. Okay, now you're 1-1, and guess what? They're 1-1 too. Now they may be one of the best 1-1 teams in the country, but for me, this is a litmus test game. Where are we at as a program from a competitive standpoint? We know that Clemson has more dogs or more guys out there, just dudes right now than maybe Georgia Tech does at the developmental stage. I think Georgia Tech has some of those young guys that are going to be very dominant in 2 to 3 years. But where are you at from a competitive standpoint? In the locker room, what's that like? In the weight room, what is that like right now? You see all these videos, you see all these type of hype videos and these things. What does that do for a program that has to sit here and say, listen, we want to be one of the best in the ACC, and there's the giant right there, and we've got a chance to take them down, if at least scare them a little bit. So I think in this game that defensively, like Ken said, you've got to be able to force turnovers. You've got to be able to do some things as well that cause havoc on Clemson's offense, get them out of sorts. You take the crowd out of it. This is going to be a night game in Death Valley. Very tough place to play. Georgia Tech's known that. Going back to a couple years ago when they played there and it got ugly and it never is a snowball effect. That can't happen in this game. We're going to take a break real quick. We're going to talk about Section 103. We have some awesome graphics. They're a big-time sponsor of us, and we love to see that. Section 103 right here. You got your boy St. John Days right there, repping it, former Georgia Tech A-back, running back, however you want to refer to it. But listen, it's the official Tech Gold apparel with the new word mark, which is really hard to find anywhere else. They're also the only place you can get the apparel with the ATL logo. You see right there. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. They're super soft and comfortable, and most of all, they're started by a Georgia Tech grad. And the best thing, you can have that new next design. You can vote on it, section103.com. And guess what? If you're watching the show here tonight, we got a special deal for you. Crowded Booth. Put that in there right there. Crowded Booth for 10% off your first order at Section 103. It's a fantastic deal. I'm not in the apparel. Apologize for that, but I'm going to have my apparel on next Tuesday when we recap Clemson and look ahead of the next contest. We have our group at Crowded Booth going to have a full apparel, so we're excited about that as well. The hoodies are fantastic. Love the hoodies they have. Let's flip over now to the offensive side of the ball for Georgia Tech. Once again, Ken, we appreciate your comment from earlier. If you'd like to throw in a comment, listen, Twitter Spaces, we had a lot of people wanting to talk. You don't have to ask to talk. You can say right here, put your comments down there and below. Share this with your friends as well as we talk a little bit more about this game and take a look in depth at what Georgia Tech and Clemson have to do. Offensively, I think there's some question marks with the quarterback position. We talked on the Twitter Spaces last Thursday. I believe, and this is just me personally, there is never a bad time for a quarterback to lose their job. Quarterback can lose their job when they're hurt. They can lose their job when they take an off day. Anything can happen with a guy behind him. I'm still in the camp that Jeff Sims is the quarterback of the future. I've said this multiple times. I think that Jeff Sims has the ability to be a top 3 quarterback in the ACC by the time he leaves. He has that type of potential that by his senior year, he could be a top guy. We got Matt Brook right there. Matt agrees. Matt, I'm guessing that you are agreeing with that comment of Georgia Tech and Jeff Sims right there being a top guy. Matt Brook, FSU is a dumpster fire. Yeah, it's Mike Norvell's crew. I felt like they took a step forward, and now they took 12 steps back with that one. But yeah, so Jeff Sims to me is going to be the quarterback of the future. It's not a question. But what Tech fans and what you guys want to know, and I feel like, and let me know if you want to know this, you want to know who's the quarterback now. Who is the quarterback right there? And I'll give that comment right there, Matt. Jeff Sims is our guy. Yates is just making his comeback easier. I like that. The reason I like that, Matt, is because Sims is – you have the future, but Jordan Yates he's a playmaker. He's a guy that can do things with the football, and he did it well. He executed the game plan, was interesting. We got Michael Hickman's comment in there. The marriage proposal at FSU was a long shot. Come on, Hickman. I know you hook me up with some tickets sometimes, but you can't. At least the young man's happy. If he takes off the FSU uniform, I'm okay with that. But going back to the offense right there, you have the running backs. I was talking with my co-host on the Crowded Booth. Meanwhile, you should check us out as well. We talk general sports, and we feel like, and I felt like this personally, Georgia Tech has one of the most unheralded, talented oh, Hickman right here. Her name was Mary. That's all we need to know. You have this interesting where you have the running backs, you have the receivers. We got Sanders in there. Sanders saying Sims has more upside, but if he's not healthy, you have to go to Yates. Man, and Sanders, you beat me to the punch right there. That's what I'm thinking as well. Obviously, you have the transfer from Temple and Trad Beatty, but I don't think you want to see him in a situation like this. Jordan Yates is a playmaker. He showed the ability to escape the pocket. And to me, guys, he was a little bit more accurate with the ball than we saw against Northern Illinois from Jeff Sims. Like I said, I think Jeff Sims has the more upside like Sanders referred to, but this is an opportunity of what can help you be the most competitive in week 3. In week 3 right now, if Sims is not completely healthy, and remember, the injury was to his left shoulder, not his throwing shoulder. So that'll be something to keep tabs on throughout practice. We'll keep you updated with that over at the GoJackets.com page. But what's going to be interesting to watch is if Jordan Yates, and let's just spitball here, and I want y'all's opinion as well. If Jordan Yates, let's say that this game he goes out there and he shows that he is just a gamer. I mean, he just goes out there and he plays well. It's interesting. It's interesting to see what happens in weeks 4, 5, 6. If Yates, do you ride the hot hand? And that's something I want to ask you. Do you feel like you ride the hot hand with Jordan Yates? And let's say Sims, let's say that this game is, Clemson wins it 38-20, 38-23. That's for me where I want to see. We got another comment right here, hot take from Matt. Collins ran the defense last week and prepared them for battle. Interesting right there, Matt. Did you feel like that he kind of maybe took the reins? We know Collins is a defensive guy. We know that what he did at Temple and what he's done in previous regimes, what he did at Mississippi State, what he did at Florida when he's defense coordinator at Florida. So we know what he can do. And I like Matt's second comment right here. The only thing that can compare you for Death Valley, and I'm guessing you're saying prepare for Death Valley, is experience. And then he says Jeff has that experience. Jeff has the experience, and I think that would come in handy in a big game like this. I mean, Jeff Sims played at Tallahassee last year. He came back home against a UCF team that was one of the more tougher non-conference matchups we saw in a season when we didn't have a lot of non-conference matchups in 2020. But I think if you're riding the hot hand, and you have to do that, you have to say that Jordan Yates, if he's a hot hand, what does that look like? How long do you roll with Jordan Yates if he's playing well? If Tech is competitive in this game, and then they go out in week 4, 5, and 6, and let's say they win a couple ball games that they shouldn't, do you insert Jeff Sims back into the lineup? Jordan Yates is playing well. Matt with another comment right here. NIU was a fluke for the whole program. And Matt, I want to keep your comment up because I like what you're saying right here, because this is something that's been hotly debated for the past 2 weeks. Was Northern Illinois more of just a fluke of what was happening, or was this something that maybe more of an accurate reflection of the program? You've had Jekyll and Hyde the first 2 weeks. So we'll have to see, obviously. And like I said, this is a litmus test game. You're going to learn a lot about your program. I think I want to see some more of the backs get involved a little bit more. And you might be saying, Brian, so what do you mean by that? Because Dante Smith had a touchdown. Dante Smith showed his ability to go out of the backfield. Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm telling you right now, Jahmyr Gibbs is one of the most talented backs in the country. If Georgia Tech had a better team, he would have received the same amount of national notoriety that the man down in Auburn did, and their young running back that they have. This is a guy, Jahmyr Gibbs, that has the talent to be. He is an NFL talent running back. You watch him in his ability to return kicks. You watch him in his ability to just be dynamic, whether it's getting the ball out of the backfield or being involved in the passing game. And then you throw in the fact you have a veteran guy who I feel like is more of a bruiser. He looks for that contact, and Jordan Mason. And we haven't talked about, Jemias Griffin or Bruce Jordan Swilling that may be able to have to be called on in a pinch. I mean, this is to me, it's 4 guys deep where you can really, really have a talented group. You can use a lot of weapons. How does Dave Patino do that? Man, to me, that's a good problem to have. That's a really good problem to have those amount of running backs. Let's take it to the receivers. And you know where I'm getting to. Matt right there. Love that, Matt. With play calling. You got to have right play calling. And that's something, too, I want to see. I mean, I don't feel like I saw something. I felt like they could be a little more creative with the play calling for Georgia Tech. I mean, obviously, Patino has the ability to do these things. But I think that we have right here Sanders saying it seemed like Patino had a different game plan for Yates. It was less RPO. Sanders, want to keep your comment up there. Because you got the cool Jackets hat. I'll watch it over on Twitter. Once again, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, hit the notifications. And that's something, too, was for you guys, and we have a comment that may debate that. For Sanders, he felt like it was less RPO than Jeff Sims. In Matt's opinion, is the RPO is not necessary for Jeff Sims. I'll say this. Jordan Yates is a great athlete. I think he has good arm talent. But I think Jeff Sims has the better deep ball. I think that, he has the stronger arm. He's probably a little bit more athletic. But listen, guys, it's a good problem to have. In situations like this, and I'll tell you this too, programs learning this cross country, you don't coach in fear of the transfer portal. You put the best guy out there, and if he plays and Sims says he wants to leave, and I'm not speculating or anything like that, or if Yates wants to leave, you don't coach for the transfer portal. You put the best guys out there. Sanders, I like that right there, agreeing 100%. I appreciate that. It's okay if you don't agree. We can talk about that with Sanders right there. Ken Fowler right here. It's not sexy, but running the ball moves the chains, runs the clock, and keeps Clemson's offense on the sideline. My producer's going crazy over here because Ken, he's a former offensive lineman. My producer over here, Ralph, and he's chopping away at that one because you're right. It's not sexy, but with the running back talent and the offensive line that's supposed to take a step forward this season, man. We saw what Georgia, and I know you guys hate using that as an example, but it's the common opponent right now because I don't think there's much you can take away from the South Carolina State game. DJ did struggle a little bit, but defensively, we saw Georgia wear down that defensive front for Clemson. Why? Because the offense for Clemson couldn't stay on the field. So that's going to be something right there. Matt, I love the second comment. We're going to go to your first one here. All I'm saying is the Coastal is up for the taking, and we have to get it together. Go back down to Matt's to hell with Georgia right there. Love that one. Then he's got the thumbs down. Matt's obviously showing who he's a fan of, and we're proud that you're a part of the first ever episode of Swarm Talk. But offensively, like you said, guys, and like Ken said, I think you've got to utilize the run game. If it's there, don't deviate from it. And, Ken, that's the big thing. A lot of times, and I felt like this in the Northern Illinois game, want to get your take, that Georgia Tech tried to get a little too cute with the play calling. And I think sometimes is you want to transition so far away from the triple option when this team for the past 2 to 3 years has been built to run the football. That's what they did so successful under Paul Johnson. So why get away from that if you're still built to do that? They have the running backs. They've got a bigger offensive line than they've ever had in the past 5 to 6 seasons. But I think that it's very interesting to talk about that. Sanders, we've been talking about for 2 weeks, Gibbs and Mason. Sanders, I love what you said right there, because between Jahmyr Gibbs and Jordan Mason, that's a running back duo that's very underrated. They can be used in different ways, and it has the potential and the ability to be very dynamic. Going back to Matt down here, he doesn't like Collins' original hires for coordinators. Tech was spending money. Why not spend, go to the next one, money on coordinators at the time? Hey, watch that enter button. It'll get you sometimes between the comments right there. And Matt, we appreciate you tuning in. Listen, we're going to break more of, the offense down, but I think it's like you said, I want Georgia Tech. I want to see them pound the football. If they have success, stay with it. But you've got to, at some point, let Clemson respect the passing game. And what does that mean? That means getting a guy like Kyrick McGowan involved. That means getting a guy like Malachi Carter, Dylan Devaney, Dylan Leonard, both of those tight ends. Use those guys. Use your full disposal because you have talent on the outside. The question coming into the season was, what was it going to look like up front? And I'll tell you one thing. Going back to what we talked about on the defensive side of the ball, for the offense, for me, I would take it personal as well. How many points they scored in that game last year? Ralph, can I get you to look that up? Georgia Tech, Clemson. I think it was 70-7 was the final. And I know we have some viewers in here that will correct me if I'm wrong. But you barely scored. You take that personal in your own house. Now you're going up to their house. And to me, there should be something personal right there. 73-7. You lost that game. Appreciate Ralph over here producing. He's doing a fantastic job. You lost 73-7. Take that a little bit personal. Take it upon yourself, saying, "Listen, we're not going to let that happen." You have guys like Devin Cochran, who's 6'7", 300 and almost 400, God knows what pounds. He's huge. Run it at them. You have Brian Brissy. You have all of these talented defensive linemen. Remember, they're missing a couple pieces. They've gotten beat up a little bit. This is not a first game of the season where everybody's fresh. They got a little bit of a breather with their FCS opponent. But, man, pound the football like Ken was saying. And can we get Ken's comment back up there because I like it so much? It's not sexy. Oh, Ken's with another one. Absolutely. If the O-line is truly better, Gibbs and Mason are on the Doak Walker Ward watch list, then we should be able to run the ball. And you know what is sexy? Winning. Ken, I love it. Absolutely love it. Ken is we've only been on this stream for 32 minutes. We're going to get ready to wrap up here soon. But Ken's, I guess we could call you a longtime listener and a longtime follower as well. Ken was in the Twitter Spaces. We got Matt Brook in here with another comment we're taking for it right there. We got Ralph as well talking. He's the version of the Crowded Booth and my Twitter account if you're watching on there. Going to Matt's comment, the O-line at Clemson has been falling left and right, injuries. That's going to be big for the defensive side of the ball. We talked about that earlier. And then Ralph, how he put it up here on the Crowded Booth, Tech allowed 671 yards last year against Clemson and only had 204 yards for themselves. So what does that tell me? You got to, it's at some point as a competitor, it's got to be personal. It has to be, we got smacked at our home last year, and we don't want that to happen again. Like Ken said, run the ball, establish the run early, and and Ken, going back to what you said, I know it's not sexy and people don't love it, but man, when you can run the ball, what does that set up? The play action pass. Now listen, Clemson's got some good pass rushers. Your offensive line is going to have to take a step up in this game if you want to compete. So that's kind of, for me, as we transition here, what needs to happen and what could happen. Now, what's the worst-case scenario? The worst-case scenario is you get torched on defense. The worst-case scenario is your offensive line doesn't show up. They don't get off the bus. It's interesting. Matt, right here, we've allowed less than 500 in the last 2 games. I knew who they were, but still. And, Matt, you do have a point with that because I've talked about this on our show in the Crowded Booth. We talk about on Mondays and Wednesdays live, and this Swarm Talk conversation is going to be live every Tuesday night. But you have to still execute against the lesser teams. And so Matt does have a point right there. You have to be able to execute. You have to be able to do the things necessary. So good point there from Matt. Matt, first time here. Matt, we appreciate your first-time listener, first-time watcher. We may have to get you hey, Matt, if you just tuned in, 10% off. Use the Crowded Booth, Section 103. They're right there. They got some great gear. It's a ton of fun, Matt. We appreciate you being over there on Twitter, Matt. I know you're watching on Twitter, I'd love for you to get in on the YouTube chat as well. That is what we want to see. The numbers continue to climb. We want to see them climb because of you guys, the fans, tuning in, because this is what makes college football, the fans, and it's what makes Georgia Tech football special for you guys coming together, having a common bond and talking about it. And that's the reason we wanted to start this as kind of a subsection here on the Crowded Booth, because one, I have the opportunity to cover it. We can do that, and it's going to be interesting. We got a comment here from Jim Stewart. Jim, I appreciate you. Anybody else been disappointed at how little we've used the tight end through 2 games? Leonard has 1 catch, and I don't think Devaney has 1. It'd be something interesting to see right there, because I think you have to use the tight ends in this game. Listen, tight ends are a safety valve. You saw what the boys up in Athens have? They've got some pretty dang good tight ends. They're missing their 2 starters, and their 3rd and 4th string are starting, and their 4th string tight end had an 89-yard touchdown run. He topped out at 20.9 miles an hour. So, yeah, Jim, you're right. You need to be using the tight end if you're Dave Patton in this offense. I like that. I appreciate it. Once again, if you have any comments, throw those in there as well. You have to take it personal, what we were talking about earlier. It's going to be interesting to see. Keith right there, Devaney is hurt. And I want to bring that up right there, Keith's comment, because he is hurt to the extent, that's been something that's kind of been something that's very interesting, because he is hurt, but I think it's very interesting to see that it's going to be, how do you go forward? How does he heal? But you still have options. Right here, Michael Hickman right here. We have used the tight ends in pass pro, and that's something you are right in that, Hickman. I think the biggest difference is you have to take what the defense gives you. And going back to Jim's comment and throwing Michael's in there as well, is you need to be able to see what the defense lines up as. If they don't give you the tight end, then you can't take it. You can't force it in there. Clemson's not going to give you a lot. Clemson, what they're going to do is if they're going to probably try to stop the run, but they're also going to not want to give up the big play. So if it's a 5-yard out or a 7-yard slant or a 5-yard in or a screen pass, you're going to have to take what they give you and roll with that. We got Sanders in here as well at Section 103. I'm a big guy. Can we get some 4XL shirts? Sanders, I'll talk to the man. We'll see what we can get rolling. But they've got some great gear. And then Ralph Leary in there. Use code Crowded Booth for 10% off on Section 103 apparel. We're excited to be a part of that. And right there, my guy Ralph, he's producing the show. He's also my co-host on the Crowded Booth. We're live here on Mondays and Wednesday nights, and we're about to take another step and expand our brand as well. And the Swarm Talk is going to be a part of that. It's going to be a ton of fun. Let's dive into your questions if you have any questions. But let's also dive in. I don't want to play the prediction game because this is a game where it's tough to do that. Jim Stewart with the comment. Jim throwing some shade over there. If you wear a 4XL, do you have eligibility left? Hey, and then the guys over at Section 103 coming. They've got 3XL, but we may need to add some 4XL in Section 103. You might need to listen. You got to check out their brand. Ralph, throw the video back up there. Loop that back again of what we have coming on with Section 103. Some fantastic gear. You got the Tech Gold. You have the shirt right there. Bobby Dodd Stadium. It's a beautiful shirt. You have St. John Days. And then what's better? ATL and the Waffle House right there. Great combination. And, man, my man Ralph, he's going to pick up from Section 103 the dry fit shirt. I'm going to get that hoodie right there, that light hoodie. Fall time is coming. Nothing better than Section 103, started by a Georgia Tech grad. We're excited to be partnered with them here on this weekly talk show from the Crowded Booth presents Swarm Talk. We got a couple more minutes here. We want to answer any questions from you. I want to kind of explain what the format of this show is going to look like going forward. Tuesdays, every single Tuesday night at 7:30, we're going to be going live. We're going to be going live here on YouTube, also on my Twitter as well. I want to see you guys blow this up. I want you to see it. Share with your friends. Share with your colleagues. If you're a Georgia Tech fan, share with the people you have at work and say, hey, people care about Georgia Tech football. We got a comment from Sanders. What Sanders wants to see. Sanders wants to see mistake-free football and taking advantage of any mistake Clemson gives us. If we don't pull the upset, make it competitive. Listen, it would be an upset for the ages. I don't think there's any question. You're not going to be favored. What's the line on that, Ralph? You need to get that for me, the Vegas line on what it is. Maybe one of our viewers has it. You want to see it competitive, and I like that. If the final score ended up being Clemson 33 or 35, within 14 points, I think Matt Brook there has got the correct line, 28.5. Man, after losing 73-7 last year, guys, and folks and women and whoever's a Tech fan here in the chat, I want to see the under on that. I want to see the under. Matt Brook's taking that as well, 28.5. Oh, gotcha. Okay. Very nice. Matt Brook is going to take it. I got my man producer over here, Ralph, who's just spitting out the knowledge. He's a great co-host. He's doing a great job of doing this as well. But I think it's interesting to see what this team looks like. Are they going to compete? What team's going to get off the bus? And that's going to be the big part. Did they come out there with a chip on their shoulder? I think it's going to be very interesting. Jim, we got right here. I'm in agreement with that last comment. The coach's job is to put the players in a position to succeed. In some cases, that might not be a win. Just be competitive. Jim, I like that as well. And I think that's realistic. This is a Clemson program now. Listen, anything can happen. Anybody can beat anybody on any given Saturday. And that's been proven fact already through the first 2021 season. Ralph, if I'm correct, it's 12 AP top 25 teams this year have lost already. I think Cole Kublik put that one out. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens with this program. Can they take this step? Going back to Michael Hickman right here. Dabo will use this game to try and get their offense healthy. We better be ready for a 60-minute battle. I love that. Wages Carroll in here on the channel on YouTube. Wages, we appreciate it. Wages, a Georgia Tech grad, good friend of mine. Give me 3 things that have to happen for us to win. We've talked about it a little bit already, Wages. I'm going to reiterate it for you as we close out tonight's show. You got to win the turnover battle. I think it was earlier we had our guy talking about that. You have to win the turnover battle. I want to see 175, and I like that too, Wages, aside from UGA's blueprint. Win the turnover battle, a.k.a. 7 sacks and a defensive tutty, like that. Win the turnover battle. I want to see 175-plus yards of rushing, and I want to see around 250 through the air. Now, what does that get you? Ralph, what does that get you? 250 plus 175? I didn't graduate from Georgia Tech, guys. It's interesting to see. But we have one of our mathematicians right there. But you do those things, you have a well-balanced offensive attack, you win the turnover battle. I think that's something that's going to be interesting to see. Wages Carroll says he likes it. Going back to Ken Fowler now. Go in and compete with Clemson, and suddenly games like Notre Dame, North Carolina, etc. look like possibilities. I wrote this in our mailbag Monday through – it's very interesting. Ken, I don't necessarily think that Georgia and Clemson are going to be those tough ones to win. But if you go in there and compete, Notre Dame and North Carolina haven't looked like as good as we thought they were going to be. But you get North Carolina in the Benz. The Benz, not the Dome anymore, Ralph. The Benz. In Mercedes-Benz. It's a night kickoff. You get Notre Dame up in South Bend. And I'm telling you, if you get one of those games and you get one of those wins, that's the one that can change the trajectory of a program, even if you don't have a full 12-game slate of how you wanted to turn. Wages, real quick, did he miss Sims versus Yates? You did, Wages. You got to tune a little bit earlier. But I'll say this right here. Who would I want to see? I want to see the guy that's healthy and has got the hot hand. If that's Jordan Yates coming into this ball game and he's got the hot hand, you ride that out. If Jeff Sims is ready to go and he comes in the game looking like the Jeff Sims that was in week 1 last year against Florida State, or looks like Jeff Sims that we think his potential can be, I want to see that right there. And then once again, my man Ralph, hey, Wages, throw it up there. Do you want some Section 103 apparel? Use code CrowdedBooth for 10% off. He's hitting it. He's hitting it in there. We got Keith. I agree with whoever said earlier. We start Yates and have Sims ready to go if Yates struggles. It's a great problem to have, Keith. It really and truly is. We got about 2 more minutes before the show is over. We're going to wrap it up right here. Can our Irish punter throw dimes? He's no Presley Harvin, who's now playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I think we haven't talked about it. Special teams is going to be huge. In the Georgia-Clemson game, and Wages, I know you said you didn't want us to talk about whatever that was that you were talking about. But special teams for me, or someone said earlier, what aside from Georgia flipped the field against Clemson. Tech's going to do the same thing. We're going to need special teams to come up big in this game for Georgia Tech to win. You're going to need to see Brent Smaglia, not miss 31-yard field goals. or he's going to have to hit those in order to be successful. It's going to be a ton of fun to watch. I think Georgia Tech has a great opportunity. And I know it's coach speak, guys, and I know it's coach speak, but you want the opportunity to compete. Georgia Tech has that. They're going to see that, and I think it's going to be a ton of fun to watch. Any last questions, go ahead and throw them in there. If not, we are going to wrap up the show. Sanders, thanks for doing this show. Go Jackets. To hell with Georgia and Clemson. Sanders, I hope to see you right back here no matter what happens next Tuesday night. It's been fun. I've enjoyed talking with you guys. Once again, make sure you follow, like, and subscribe. The Crowded Booth. That's where we're going to have to do this. And Wade, just get me with a score prediction right there. You can use the code as well. Wade, I'm not going to go a score prediction quite yet. Jim Stewart, love the show. Thanks. Jim, subscribe. Set up the notifications on YouTube so you know when we're live once again. And once again, you guys make this possible. You guys have fun with it. And that's what makes this show take off. Share it with your friends. Share it with your colleagues. We're having a ton of fun. Use the code Crowded Booth for 10% off on Section 103 apparel. Ralph, let's put that thing back one more time in circulation to see what these people can get. It's going to be a ton of fun stuff. I'm excited as you take a look at that one right there. Some great stuff right there. ATL, the Waffle House, my guys over there, Section 103, great apparel. I'm going to be repping it on the show next Tuesday. And listen, we may have to take this show on the road. Do you know any good tailgates? We may have to have a game day show of Swarm Talk right outside Bobby Dodd. But listen, for everyone tuning in, from a man behind the computer over here and Ralph Leary, he's been producing, putting in the comments as well. Keith, we didn't forget your comment right there. Go Jackets. Wages. If you want to see my score prediction, head over to the crowdedbooth.com right here because we are going to have it. I got to get it over here, right here, crowdedbooth.com. Sign up completely free. You'll get it right into your email. It's a ton of fun. Thanks, everyone. You've had a fantastic show. It's been fun. The first ever episode of Swarm Talk is over, and it was a ton of fun. Thanks, everyone.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on.